You are listening to the Delay and Pray podcast, episode number 186.
Welcome to the Delay and Pray podcast, where certified Catholic and weight loss coach Beth teaches you how to permanently lose weight through spiritual fasting. Get ready to gain faith and lose weight through a joyful transformation of both body and soul. Now, your host, Beth, the Catholic fasting coach.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Excuse my voice as I am just getting over laryngitis, and I know I sound a bit deeper than usual. You know, I've never had this before, and it's been interesting just being a listener more than a talker. And if I have to talk, I was whispering the last few days or just being quiet, which is interesting. There's a huge holy opportunity in that, you know. These things I've learned. So anyway, but I have a little voice, so I'm going to go ahead and record the introduction today. I did this interview last week, right before I got laryngitis, so that's good. So I just want to say it was a wonderful interview. And today you're going to hear a discussion of what happens when the deepest pain of your life, losing your husband, collides with your relationship with food. And we all know that a lot of times when we're in despair, we go to food and alcohol for comfort. And that is something that we can learn not to do. And so in this episode, I have a very moving conversation about grief and losing your husband with three remarkable women who are widows from the Delay and Pray group coaching experience. These women are Canino, Amy Blakely, and Shirley Lokar. And we have many, many more. These are just the three who agreed to come on and really share their stories, which is very personal. So each of these women do share just a really unique story of loss, faith, healing, and transformation. And I learned so much from each of them. I think what struck me the most about the conversation is that all three women experienced the devastating loss of their husbands due to diabetes, a disease that is curable through diet and lifestyle, and we know that. And their stories have really set me on a path to care better for my husband while he is alive, to keep him in this, alive state for a long time. And I hope it does the same for you. I hope it does something that inspires you to take the time to really care for your husband, the way that you cook for them, the way that you care for them, the way that you live your lifestyle. And so I really have been thinking of that in the last week since I've done this interview, and it's just been very interesting for me. So it was interesting because during their grief, it seemed like each found herself reaching for food as a source of comfort or a type of relief or an escape or, something like that, some kind of relief from just this deep, painful loss. And they gained weight and they were searching for help. And eventually they found Delay and Pray and spiritual fasting. And soon they discovered something far greater than weight loss. I love the weight loss, as you know, but listen, when you discover that Christ himself is the answer that you've been seeking, there's something deeply profound about that, and the weight does fall off. So their stories reveal a profound truth, and that is food was never meant to carry the weight of our suffering. Christ is. Only God can do that, my friends. The beautiful part of life is that he wants us fit in both body and soul, and you can have both. You can learn to go to him for your comfort, your relief, your escape, and to go to other things, giving him the glory the whole time. So let me introduce you to these amazing women, and then I'll get into the interview. First is Christine. She is a wife, mother, widow, and professed member of the Third Order Carmelites. She was married to her husband for 35 years. She devoted her life to her family and her faith. And after her husband's passing at the end of 2021, Christine entered a season of profound grief. As a Carmelite for more than a decade, she had long relied on prayer and contemplation, yet widowhood brought challenges she never expected. And she talks about that in the interview. In January 2023, she joined the Delay and Pray group coaching experience, seeking some support and encouragement and weight loss. But what she found was much more than a weight loss program. She found a community of women pursuing holiness together. And she found that through spiritual fasting, she was able to unite her suffering to Christ and discovered that healing often happens when we stop trying to numb our pain with food and alcohol and instead bring it directly to God. So today, Christine serves on the Delay and Pray team with me. She is my handy dandy assistant and I love her so much. And she is part of helping other women experience the same hope and transformation that she found during one of the most difficult seasons of her life. So you'll hear from Christine. Next is Amy. And Amy's story is one of resilience and rediscovery. She was a cradle Catholic raised in a large family with 12 siblings. Amy spent years away from the church before returning to her faith in 2014 with the encouragement of her husband, Phil. Although Phil did not practice a faith tradition for much of his life, the two began listening together to Father Mike Schmidt's Bible in a Year podcast in January of 2021. Through those daily encounters with Scripture, Phil came to know God before his death later that year. Following the loss of her husband, Amy found herself struggling with both grief and weight gain. Standing 5'11", she had battled insecurities about her size for much of her life. By 2024, she knew something had to change. When she joined the Delay and group coaching experience just a few months ago in January of 2026, everything began to change. She learned that fasting was not simply about eating less, it was about growing closer to Christ. For the first time, she began to understand that food could never fix her loneliness, her sadness, grief, or anxiety. Coaching her through this difficult time was a joy for me, and she discusses those coaching sessions in the interview. Amy also shares that the journey continues every day, but now she walks it with God at the center. I think you're going to really enjoy listening to her. And last but not least is Shirley. Shirley's story is nothing short of heroic. She was raised Catholic, developed a deep love for Jesus at an early age, and she remembers spending her lunch hours cleaning the convent chapel while attending Catholic school. This was a beautiful sign of the servant's heart that would define much of her life. Over the years, Shirley endured tremendous suffering. She cared for 2 husbands through significant health challenges and eventually experienced the unimaginable grief of becoming widowed twice. Through all of it, she continued serving others, and Shirley is a joy-filled woman, and she is so funny. We love having Shirley in the group. She always has really great, devout Catholic advice, and she comes across in such a joyful and beautiful way and always has a smile on her face. Well, when she found the Delay and Pray group coaching experience, she finally encountered an approach that addressed both the body and the soul. For the first time, she began uncovering emotional wounds and thought patterns that had fueled years of emotional eating. Again, in just 6 months, Shirley lost more than 60 pounds. It seems to be the trend. So that's how it goes. And yet the physical transformation pales in comparison to the spiritual healing she has experienced. She discovered freedom from the beliefs and habits that had kept her stuck for decades. And I think you're going to love hearing her story. So I think the powerful connection none of us could ignore that we didn't know beforehand was that we realized that all 3 women had lost their husbands to complications related to diabetes. And so the discussion naturally turned toward the modern epidemic of metabolic disease, which is what we are talking about. It's about insulin resistance. It's about overeating and sugar addiction. And this gets to the heart of diabetes. While grief brought these women together, their experiences have also fueled a renewed commitment to care for their bodies, the ones that God has entrusted to them, and help their families get out of unhealthy eating patterns. Each woman expresses a desire not merely to survive, but to thrive, to live happy, holy, healthy lives well into old age. We all have a mission, my friends, and we deserve to treat our bodies well because they're on loan from God. They are a gift from God, and we can fight metabolic disease. We can do it right now. They now understand that physical health and spiritual health are deeply connected. Caring for the body is not vanity. It is stewardship of the temple where the Holy Spirit resides. So perhaps the greatest lesson from this episode that I hope that you can get is that there is a Catholic understanding of redemptive suffering. For years, these women turned to food when life became overwhelming. Like many of us, they searched for comfort in something temporary. We all do it. Through spiritual fasting, they learned a different path. Rather than running from suffering, they learned to unite it with Christ. Their stories remind us that healing begins when we allow God into the very places we've spent years trying to avoid. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. It is honest, it's inspiring, it's funny, and filled with hope for anyone who has ever struggled with grief, emotional eating, or finding God's purpose in suffering. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Christine, Amy, Shirley, all of you, so glad you could join us. So excited that you are here to talk about really a very emotional subject, and that is, losing a spouse and how delay and pray and spiritual fasting can actually help us through this type of situation. And what's interesting is when I began Delay and Pray, I never even thought about how widows would come into the program specifically for this spiritual fasting. And what I've heard, and I want you to explain, is that basically after losing a spouse, most of the widows that have joined the program in the last few years found themselves going to food and alcohol for comfort, and they didn't want to do that, and they were looking for something else. So I want you to tell us a little bit about that. But first, I want you to tell us about your story, a little bit about your life, about your husband and your life together. And we'll start there. And then, we'll just go into how Delay and Pray has helped you. So we're going to start with Christine, and then we'll talk to Amy, and then we'll talk to Shirley. And I hope everyone enjoys this podcast. Christine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me on, Beth. I was married for 35 years. I've been a widow for 4.5 years so far. Me and my husband married shortly after college. So we met in college, and we had one daughter who is now an adult. She's married herself. We liked to spend time watching TV. My husband was a huge sci-fi fan, especially Star Trek. So we watched a lot of Star Trek together, and he enjoyed camping. He introduced me to camping. I had never gone camping before, so it was fun to explore camping. It definitely ended up being one of the funnest things that I learned about how to do as an adult. But we had a number of years together, so it wasn't till 2021 he passed in 2021. So we had quite a few years together from right after college into our 60s.
I love it. That's beautiful, Christine. All right. And so then what brought you to Delay and Pray? What happened there? What was that transition like?
I spent a year grieving, and during that year of grieving, I found myself going to food a lot in order to comfort myself and keep myself busy, I guess you could say. I ended up gaining quite a bit of weight over, especially the year before that. He had spent a year in the nursing home, so I had already been grieving during that year. And it was a pretty rough year. And then even the year before that, he almost died. So then there was a couple of years of rough water, so to speak. So I definitely was going to food and found that I gained quite a bit of weight. I was also not feeling very well. Part of my husband's issues were due to diabetes, and I didn't want to go down that same road. So I needed to find some way, because I had tried every diet in the book. Nothing ever worked. And the Lord led me to Delay and Pray, and that was definitely what helped me to turn that all around.
Good story. Okay, so we go from Christine to Amy. Amy, tell us a little bit about you and your husband and your life together and how you came to Delay and Pray.
I met my husband through work. At that time, I was a 911 dispatcher for the county, and he was a police dispatcher at one of the local police departments. And it was actually a second marriage for both of us. So we married in 2005. And actually, my story is a lot like Christine's in that we enjoyed camping together. We would go four-wheeling. We did a lot of traveling together. Neither one of us had children. So it was just the two of us, and we could pick up and go when we wanted to. And we traveled all over the United States, camping and four-wheeling and that sort of thing with our dogs. And it was a very different marriage for me. My first marriage was different in the sense that there was a lot of lack of trust. And with Phil, my husband, we had total trust in each other. And it was he changed who I was by his positive outlook and we can tackle anything attitude. And that was very different for me from the experience I'd had before. So, and also like Christine's husband, Phil, was a diabetic. He went on dialysis in July 4th of 2020. Finally decided he would go to the hospital. They put him on dialysis, and we did dialysis at home for 18 months, and he passed in September of 2021 from complications due to the diabetes and the kidney disease. So,
wow, that's really interesting that both of your husbands suffered from diabetes and ended up dying from complications due to that disease. So, Amy, that's amazing. What brought you to Delay and Pray then? Was it the delay of sugar? I mean, did this have anything to do with it?
Well, I also sat on the couch for about 18 months. And I went to my doctor and I said, everything hurts. And he said, if you want to feel better, you have to get up and move. And I'm very, very thankful for my physician because he's not one to push medication or anything like that. He's very much get up and move, eat healthy, do the things you need to do. And he's also Catholic, which is another bonus, I guess you could say, because we talk about the need for prayer and the need for fasting. And I had discussed fasting with him, and he was very encouraging that I start that. So I actually got a nutritionist, and I went to the gym, and for 6 months, I was eating healthy and I was exercising every day, and I lost 40 pounds. And I hated every minute of it because I didn't want to track everything I put in my mouth. And I don't like to lift weights and all of those things. And I knew I needed to find a way to bring God into that part of my life. God was something that I went and did on Sunday. I went to church, and my prayer life wasn't where it needed to be. And I had been slowly working on that over the last 10, 12 years of being better about that. And I realized that I needed to bring God into that. And that's when I went on Google and looked for Catholic fasting and prayer, and I found Delay and Pray.
Oh, that is awesome. So from the time that you actually Googled it to the time you signed up, how many months was that in between?
Oh, it was weeks. I think I found in December of 2025, and then I joined the cohort in January of 26.
Okay, wonderful. And
I tend to be impulsive with that. I tend to be like,
that's okay.
Now.
I'm the same way. I'm a quick decision maker. I know what I need, and I tend to jump at that really quickly. Okay. Oh, that's very interesting. This is going to be a great conversation. Let's get Shirley in here just to begin with a little bit about your husband and your life together. Now, Shirley has a little unique situation because she's actually lost 2 husbands. So she's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. My first husband, we were married for 42 years. We have 1 daughter and 3 grandkids. I grew up in the city and I lived in California for a year. I came home on a vacation. I met my husband and we were married 6 weeks later, only because my mom insisted we have a regular wedding. Anyway, so I knew I did not want to live in the city. So we moved to a rural area. This is so you have 2 city kids end up in a rural area. My husband always wanted to live something like that. Me, I didn't. I just, whatever, didn't matter. So we really thrived out there. It was everything. I mean, we were like, because we were the only country people, we were like Noah's Ark, 2 of every animal. We would have both sides family reunions every year. Everybody thought that was, unique. But we did. He was very hardworking, very creative. If something needed to be done, he would do it. And he had great engineering mind. He would find a better way to do something. So it was great. He was a Vietnam vet and was exposed to Agent Orange. So his cancer did not display itself for 35 years. I actually used him in my science classes. I used him as an example of if you expose yourself to drugs, what could possibly happen later. But anyway, his last almost 10 years, I was his caregiver. It was good in the sense that people could see that just because somebody's sick doesn't mean that you end anything. Because I actually had a brother-in-law who thanked me for staying with him. I'm like, why? I said, we took vows, love each other, death do us part. So he died February 2nd. It was after a Super Bowl Sunday game. And we lived out in the snow belt in Ohio area. And I had to drive him to the hospital. And anyway, he died there. And it was, if you can say beautiful death, his actually was. It was just, and that would be a whole nother story, but it was absolutely beautiful how he died. And then, so that was beginning of 2015. I had no plans on ever marrying again. I was content with what I was doing. I did, and this will come up later, but I did not want to cope with being by myself. Didn't face it, so I started traveling. And my daughter at the end of the first year says, I feel like I've lost 2 parents because you're never home. And I'm like, really? I was gone that good? I was doing good things. I was going on pilgrimages, having a great time. But anyway, come 2017, and it was my 50th high school reunion. And the person I was supposed to marry in 1970, somebody that I had met in college. Anyway, he saw my name, my maiden name came up on social media, and he wanted to see, we had no contact for like 50 some years. He wanted to see how I was doing. So he did contact me, and I agreed to meet him because we went together 3.5 years in college. And 2 months before the wedding, I panicked and left. So I always felt bad for hurting him. So my motivation to see him was to apologize. And if you're from the Cleveland area in Ohio, you know that the east side is the east side, the west side is the west, and the river, you need a passport, So he was far west, I was far east. We reconnected and we got married in 2018. That's it, September 8th of 2018.
How long did you date? I mean, like, again.
From September 2017 until 2018, not quite a year. But it was hard, and maybe you guys can relate. When my first husband died, I thought, okay, I'm going in a religious order. It was something I had tried earlier on and didn't work. But I went to a Benedictine women's monastery anyway, and I knew that was not what I wanted. And then again, before meeting Jack, you know how God has his way of working. The week before he contacted me, I was at another self-retreat or private retreat at an Ignatian retreat center by Akron, Ohio. And I had some spiritual advising time with the abbot there. And he says, it's all right. You can get married. And I'm like, no, that's not. He goes, no, I'm just letting you know that you are free. You've done everything. But it's like in my mind, I never not considered myself not married. I just went on. It's how it was. So he had that in my head. And when I was there, and I was using a cane because of my back and my knees, but because it was a wonderful private thing in the chapel, which was right down the hall from my room, I was in there one day and they had the big I thirst sign next to the crucifix. And I said, okay, Lord, I can't prostrate myself, but if you give me help. So I put my cane against the altar and I laid down and I said, okay, I'm yours. And then I was able to get up use my cane again to leave. But that was like the only time. And it was wonderful because it's a small chapel. It was just, for me, it was wonderful. So within a month later, Jack contacts me and we reconnect. And again, I had no plan on ever marrying again. And in fact, I had gone on a pilgrimage with another church out here, and we went to Italy and that, and he had after the pilgrimage meeting, and some of the ladies were at a table and we're talking. Somehow it always came up about, are you getting married? And I go, nope. And isn't it like how the Lord laughs at you, and it's like not that far later after that all happens. So Jack also had diabetes. We were married 6 years. He'll be gone 2 years this coming Saturday. He ended up being a double amputee. And both times, the way I comforted myself was with a good old dry wine. So that became my comfort, how I did things. And that'll lead into how I ended up with Delay and Pray. The first time my husband died in a rural area, there was no grief counseling, no anything. And I didn't really know any widows because he'd not been in hospice. He was part of the VA. I just didn't have that support. So I just did my own things. With Jack, he was in hospice. And it was like the last couple of years, like both you other ladies, we were, hospital, nursing home, back home, and hospice care at home. But when he died, they kept saying, do you want, the grief? They had a lot of grief counseling things. And I go, no, I've been through this before. I'm okay. I thought it was fine. And then they kept after me. And then finally the one lady goes, look, what if I come to your house and we talk? And I go, okay. And she said, so how are you doing eating? I'm like, I don't have any interest in it. So that's when I know the Lord put this in front of me, Delay and Pray. I don't know what, I never heard of it, never thought about it, but it came up. And I think I had to wait a couple of weeks to the next cohort. So then I started. So that would have been, I think, like September of 2024. And the first time I was not planning on being coached. I just had a question. However, Beth, in her wise ways, just started coaching me. And she asked me, I remember this, what did you have to eat today? And I go, an egg. She goes, okay, what else? I go, well, that's it. The whole point was, then she asked me what I'm in for supper. And I go, well, another one. She pushed me enough to get me to see that was not living abundantly. And that was the turning point for me, because I wasn't planning on crying. Hospice was really like, you need help. And I'm like, no, I don't. I'm good. But Beth just honed in right on what it was. And then she told me, I should say, you told me, I want you to find all the things about being abundant and abundantly in the Bible. And I did. And you gave me one passage to start me. And that really opened my eyes. I definitely was not living abundantly. That was a turning point for me. And it was like all uphill from then.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Well, that's true, because when we coach on the holy opportunity, which is abundance. It's, what we cannot see that the Lord has for us in every situation. There's something there for us, even though it's really, really difficult. And unfortunately, I don't know why we have to suffer on this side of heaven, but we do. But we have to stare it straight in the face, and we have to figure it out. It's the great experiment. And if we do it right, we will end up in heaven. But it's living this abundant life through all of this. And what I think is interesting on all three of your stories is that your husbands all suffered and died from diabetes. And it's interesting. I just quickly put through ChatGPT, like how it causes diabetes, and it didn't come up with sugar. It came up with everything that is before the sugar consumption. It's just very interesting. It's talking about insulin problems. It's talking about, as we know, it's all about, sugar and flour and alcohol and how that raises the insulin, and over time, how you become insulin resistant. So I find this interesting. And also how spiritually and neurologically we go for the sugar and the alcohol, because it is a comfort. It's a quick comfort, but it can be diabolical. It really can. And the devil can use these substances to move us off the path of sanctity, which is very, very interesting. So you three are different now. You're reorienting your lives differently. So tell us how it's different now, and the coaching, the model, the food, like how these things have affected you and helped you through this very difficult time that, like I said before we even recorded, that all women kind of fear. I'm in my 60s, and I look at my husband, and he loves to go on very long bike rides, out in the back roads of Michigan. And I always say, come back to me. And I'm praying the entire time he's gone, entire time, come back to me. The fear is that he won't. And that's, it's like, oh, what would that be like? Right. So, we're all affected by this, whether our husbands are living or they're deceased. So tell us a little bit about, how delaying sugar, flour, and alcohol and actually leaning into spiritual fasting, doing it for a spiritual purpose, how that has deepened your faith and maybe lessened the suffering actually on this road that you're on. Christine.
What I noticed with delay and pray was that, especially learning that I can do hard things. So there were so many things I had to deal with after my husband passed. We were trying to buy a bed and breakfast. So I had to close like that attempt to own a business. And I had no idea what I was doing. I had to deal with a lot of his stuff. He was a little bit of a hoarder, a little bit more than I realized of a hoarder. So there was just like a lot of things to deal with. And then there's so many things you have no idea, like that even though you have a credit card with your name on it, like it's not yours, it's your husband's. I'm like, what? Like there's just all these weird financial things that I had to sort through and figure out. And it was very challenging. I found it to be extremely challenging. It was difficult to find help. It was difficult to find answers. It was a lot of tears. And in using delay and pray and learning delay and pray, I learned that I could do hard things. And that was really helpful to me to help me to get through, those difficult challenges.
Oh, I love that, Christine. In the course, I always tell clients that the first time I had to learn how to do hard things is when I spent $20,000 to become a life coach. And I was told by my coach to print out this particular section in this 500-page book. She said, just go ahead and print out pages 348 to like 360. And I didn't know how to do that at the time. Like, how do you take a few pages out of a big document and print them out? So you have to understand, this is 2019. Now, I'd been in sales. I was pretty high tech. I'm an engineer by degree, but life moves very fast. And I wasn't sure exactly how to do this. So I just asked her. I was like, okay, I don't know how to do that. And she said, we do hard things, Beth. I know you'll figure it out. And I got off that call and I was so mad. I was like, what? I paid all this money and she can't tell me. So then I went about researching how to do this. And this is before ChatGPT. It's before any, Claude and even really good Google searches. And actually, I actually did some work. It took me about half an hour and I figured out exactly how to print those small pages to a PDF. That's what happened to me all the way through the life coaching school is we do hard things. That was the motto. And so that has helped me get through so much of my daily life is I can do hard things. Now, it's not that I don't ask other people to do it. Like I can still, Christine, if you're really good at something and you can do something I can't, I'm totally going to say, can you help me with this? No worries. But on an everyday basis, we can do hard things and we can do it. We can do it with the help of Jesus Christ. We can do all hard things. And I hope all of you have learned that. I truly hope that you have taken it within yourself, that you and Jesus can get through anything that comes your way. All right. So, Amy, anything that you want to add to that conversation?
I was just thinking that when you said how the overeating and the desire for that is from the evil one, that wasn't something I ever considered until I joined Delay and Pray. I always saw it as my weakness, my inability to regulate my emotions or stop with one Oreo instead of the whole row of Oreos. We joke in our family that a row of the Oreos out of the package is a serving because we all tend to have those overeating issues in my family. Being one of 12, there's a lot of kids and there was times when we never went without, but there wasn't an abundance either. So it was this idea that, well, if mom made brownies, there's only so many brownies. So you don't learn to, at least we didn't learn to just take one and you're satisfied. Well, there won't be one later when I want one, so I'll take two now, kind of thinking. And we have all carried that through our adulthood. I've spoken about that with my siblings. And so I never put that together with being from the evil one or being thoughts that I need to put out of my mind until I joined Delay and Pray, and then we discussed it. And much like Shirley, I didn't want to be coached in the cohort. I'm an introvert by nature, so it was way out of my comfort zone. But when you did coach me, Beth, I don't know if you remember or not, but I told you at that time that I wasn't built for joy.
Oh, I remember.
Do you remember?
Oh, yes.
I'm still looking at those notes because I still have them here on my desk. So that wasn't something that I thought was for me. So after having that coaching session with you and learning that those ideas, I need to put those ideas away and I need to lean on the virtues and work toward those. That was another thing that I really took on through the cohort was the virtues. That wasn't something I ever really went to before as far as guidance and learning how to rethink my negative thoughts. And so fortitude became my everyday fortitude. I'm writing fortitude down on my paper every day.
Fortitude.
So, and that made a huge difference.
Yeah, we are totally created for joy. And that doesn't mean having all the material things. It means having an attitude of joy through the suffering, through the chaos. And we are built for joy. But the evil one wants us to make sure that we have the thought, joy doesn't come my way. I'm not built for joy. There's no way I can even acquaint myself with it. Or, this is just how my family is, or we have issues in my family and this is just how we are, or this is just how I am. Instead of actually looking into the research of a sleeve of Oreos or whatever it is, a tray of Oreos, and understanding that they are literally manufactured with a ton of chemicals at a bliss point to keep you eating forever. They're literally chemically manufactured to keep us overeating and to get us into a state of diabetes. That's why they are manufactured that way, to make money. And then when we have diabetes, then we'll get hooked on big pharma, and we talk about a little of this in the course, not a lot. I would love to talk about that more. We do more coaching than anything, and then just reevaluating our minds. But we have to get over these negative thoughts about who we are as a negative type of person. It's just that Father Mike Schmitz often says sin is just the action or thought of doing something without God. So that's the vice, right? So we're like, oh gosh, instead of I'm like this or I'm such a bad person, it's, what? I'm kind of stuck in this vice. This is very interesting. And this is exactly where the evil one wants me. He wants us in vice. So how do I get out? What am I doing? What's in these Oreos? And then I just heard also from Father Mike, believe it or not, it was on a podcast. He said that when French fries from McDonald's first came out, they had 3 ingredients. You know what that is? That's potatoes, that's salt, and that is beef tallow or lard or whatever that was. Now it has 19. Now they have 19 ingredients. And he was funny. He goes, and I still stopped this morning. Okay, anyway. Well, stop that, Father Mike. Stop that. Get into Delay and Pray. Okay, so none of this is good for us. And there is a demonic force to some of this food. People don't really understand it that way, but it's not pure and it's not really good for us. And it's going to take an entire culture to change it. And it's happening. I think it's happening with the dyes and people are trying to get more healthy food. And I think it's happening, but we have to rely on Jesus Christ to do it. And And he's going to help us to get back to some natural food and to get back to spending a little bit more money on better food because you're going to eat less anyway. These are the hard things that we are going to do. And listen, if everybody out there, I really am trying so hard to take care of my husband. And sometimes he can get a little, not angry with me, but frustrated because we're not going to be eating the protein bars and the nuts. I'm not buying them anymore. We don't need them anymore. You don't need them. And he already is so much better than he used to be. But I'd like to keep him around a while. And I do tell him that. And I just say, we're trying to take his blood pressure every other day just to make sure it's in range, just trying to take care of ourselves because we're in our 60s. I want him to last a long time. And so it's interesting. I'm trying my best and praying and fasting for him to be the best that he can be. And it's a job. So I don't know if any of you want to comment on that, but it's not easy. And there's a little bit of a fine line I have to kind of straddle with that. But I err on his health and how fun it is to be free of alcohol, sugar, and flour. I, in my mind, kind of think of them as poisonous right now. I just do. I just do because life without them, for the most part, for me, has been so freeing and so beautiful.
This isn't necessarily, it's somewhat in line with what you're saying. Since about 2 weeks ago, my younger sister and I were having a conversation, and short story, she's spent 21 years in the military. She's been exposed to a lot of different things. She's got different disabilities because of that, because of her time overseas and things like that. So she's unfortunately on a lot of medications. And one of the things she said to me recently was she noticed a change in me. And I told her, I said, I attribute it to eating healthier and the delay and pray and the fasting. I said, that's the only thing I've done differently in the last 6 months. And so I'm trying to encourage her in that way, just, more by example of maybe we don't drink 16 Monsters a day, and maybe we don't, eat whatever. I don't even really know what she eats. I just know she drinks those Monsters all the time. So I think that's the only thing that's been in my experience is just the example. And if they see that, if other people see, like she commented that she's seen a difference in me, in my attitude, in my demeanor and things like that, then that can only be positive. And I always give it back to God. It's all God. It's not me.
Yeah, it's all God. But guess what? It's so funny. You're exhibiting joy. That's the funny thing, Amy. Your joy is exuding from you. And I love that. It's so true. It's changed my whole life. Everybody knows about my miracle about not drinking alcohol anymore. And that was from Jesus Christ on January 1st. It has given me quite the joy. And it's only the joy that only God could give. And so I would love to see a lot of other people just sitting in my shoes because it's not worth it to negotiate with bad food, bad alcohol. So what do you think, Shirley? What do you have to say about it?
Not having the wine, and I even just doing it on the weekends. I could look, and that was, different people that I talked to, I go, look if you go all week, no sugar, flour, alcohol, until sundown on Saturday, you have sundown Saturday and all Sunday. So I think for people who are in the diet thing, they don't get that. It's like if you want something, then you can save it for then and try not to be overdoing it. I agree now with the first 4 or 5 weeks not having that option because I'm like, oh, I can have a whole bottle of wine this Saturday night. I'm not totally off of that, but I'm pretty much past that. It's just, like you said, you learn you can do hard things fine. I see some of my husband Jack's, he was one of 8, and for sure 4 of them are diabetic. 2 of them are doing that Ozempic or whatever.
Yeah, the GLP ones.
And yeah, they've gotten thin. One of them hasn't. She says she still doesn't know why. And I want to say, you're still eating? Anyway, but it's like, okay. And I don't push anything, but I want so bad to say, look, I did it. It might have been a little harder than still eat whatever you're going to eat. But it's like, it's healthy. I don't have to worry what's happening to my organs 10 years down the road. So it's like we can do hard things without endangering our bodies And I still try to focus on the fact I'm trying to keep my body a temple of the Holy Spirit. And I wasn't doing that, especially that one time when you were coaching me, and I did want to rewatch it because I remembered that was very intense for me, but it was like I needed to be shaken up that, okay, this is not how you want to live, because it wasn't. And I'm so much happier now. And I do remember my priest, this is a few months back, he goes, "You're getting too thin." And I said, "Father, I'm not doing one of those drugs. This is delay and pray." I said, "I'll tell you about it another time." So, and it's just interesting when people's remarks.
Yeah. The other thing too is the Blessed Mother started me on this venture, and she needs us to pray and fast. It's through prayer and fasting that casts out demons. And that's what we're doing. We're praying and fasting and casting out demons, and especially from ourselves and from our own families. And that's what our families need from us as mothers the most, and as wives, is that we are there to pray and fast for our spouses and all of those around us. And then those ripple effects go out like the rock in the puddle, and a remnant can change the whole wide world. Maybe it is wild. And so that's what people on Ozempic, I just believe that they're being robbed of, the fasting part that is spiritual, and that is you're doing it for a spiritual purpose. It does take a while to go from this diet and vanity kind of attitude that we've poured into us since we were little as women. I'm sorry, but 50 years of this, I don't know how we change overnight, right? So then to get to sanctity through this prayer and fasting, it takes a while, but you can, I wake up every day and I'm like, oh, who am I fasting for? What is my why that makes me cry? How can I limit my sugar, flour, and alcohol? I certainly don't limit my food. I was just showing Christine what I ate today because I just am eating one meal, and sausage and cabbage and cottage cheese and a tomato and a bowl of broccoli salad that has like avo mayo on it. I mean, it's certainly not, a peach. Like, you know what I mean? It's certainly not just a very small amount of food. It's just the right food, and it's home cooked, and it's good for us. So yeah, I think out there also, I think all of you, you're in the program, so you can talk to other people and you can help them with the grief that they're going through, and finding other sources of dopamine in order to comfort yourself. And especially through scripture. Amy just hit the nail on the head, through scripture and through, Jesus Christ and his word and the sacraments. And then it takes time, doesn't it? It just takes time to roll into a different way of eating and a different way of living spiritually.
What I learned is that I couldn't really make my husband eat a certain way. I tried for many years, actually, and I had to kind of give up that control. And I wish I would have known about delay and pray back then, because I can see how much of a difference it would make. So now I'm seeing the Lord is showing me how, by using delay and pray, how I can positively affect other people, and I'm not controlling. So, for example, I gave my mom a copy of your book, Beth, and she is delaying and praying just very simply as an 84-year-old woman. She just doesn't have sugar and flour and alcohol during the week. She still eats 3 meals a day and maybe a snack or so. But she has her A1C is a lot better now. Her doctor is very happy. She's lost some weight, not a huge amount, but her doctor is very happy with what's happening, and she feels a lot better. And I've noticed people at church are noticing as well that I look better, and that, they can tell that there's a difference. And even my priest, when I went and asked him if I could do a delay and pray book study, I mean, he didn't make me go through all these approvals and the evangelization committee and all these things. He just said, "Oh yeah, do this. Yeah, we need this. I need this too." So it's the example is the way the Lord is definitely using me now.
I agree. Absolutely. Amy?
I think that for me, the grief part of losing my husband, I had been through that before I got to delay and pray. But delay and pray helped me get back what I lost in the grief process as far as my physical, not taking care of myself. So that's been hugely beneficial. I can't even express how much. And it also, the closeness I have now in my relationship with the Lord and with Mother Mary. I'm on my second 54-day novena of the year.
Yay!
Just because I need to talk to Mama Mary, you know? And the benefits that come with that, I get on the scale every day and I record my weight, but if I don't lose this 15 pounds I gained back after I lost the 40 from the gym, I'm okay with that because I know I'm eating healthier and I'm praying and I'm trying to, as Shirley said, trying to treat my body like the temple that God created it to be. So
Yeah.
I feel like as long as I stay doing what God wants me to do, then I'm going to be okay.
I love it. Thank you for that. It's interesting. As my daughter just got married, they were talking about a little bridal shower and how it was with his work and how they sent them home with like 3/4 of a sheet cake that nobody ate it. And so he said he doesn't even eat snacks. He's so healthy. He's like, I ended up eating cake like every day. And I said, well, why didn't you throw it away? And he's like, oh, somebody bought that. I felt so bad. And I said, you know what I say? And he said, yep. My body's not a trash can. I am a temple of the Holy Spirit. And I'm like, yes. And I ended up putting that beginning for everybody. My body is not a trash can because the trash can's in the kitchen, and do not be afraid to put your leftover cake, your leftover stuff into the trash can instead of into your body, because somehow that was drilled into us as kids. And we feel like we have to eat it, especially cake, cookies, candy, sugar, flour, and the alcohol we can just usually put away, unless it's wine even. Sometimes my husband was like, well, wine isn't going to be good tomorrow, so I'll just drink it. I'm like, well, that's not good. That's not good either. Okay, so our bodies are not a trash can. We are the temples of the Holy Spirit, and moderation is key. So, Amy, I love what you just said, and Christine too. So, all right, Shirley, what you got to end it all?
All right. So, as far as losing a spouse, think of it as a gift, an opportunity to pay more attention to the Lord. You can grow more in love with Him. I have learned through both husbands, there's only one person who can fill my heart, and that's Jesus. And it's like, that's my focus all the time for everything. A lot of those different questions, my answer was, I'm closer to the Lord. That's it. Grief doesn't end. There's no end time. It evolves. It could be 2 years. It could be 10 years. My sister lost her husband 10 years ago. And finally this year, as he died scuba diving in Cozumel, we finally were there, and she had a chance to, she wasn't with him. She had a chance to have closure. And it just evolves with us. But it's all focused on the Lord, which is where we should be.
It's where we should be. And I love that. That's the abundant life, is the Lord. It's the Lord. But it takes all of us together to grieve together and to understand how to walk this new life together. I can just imagine. And I am so glad that you all chose Delay and Pray. I'm so glad that you joined our group. And I think too, widowhood can maybe feel lonely. And so this is a place that you can come and learn how to eat good food, how to pray, how to get coached. I think coaching is huge. I get coached myself, and hope just seems to begin to return. And so just want everyone to know out there, just listen to the podcast, get the book, come into the coaching group if you'd like. That's always an option. But, we're going to go through these different stages of life. We just don't know what's going to happen. But I know one thing, and that is I want to get to heaven, and I want to be a saint, and I want to exhibit as much joy as possible on this side of heaven. So you all help me so much. I get so much out of this because you're here. So thank you, Shirley. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Christine, for coming on the podcast and talking about your grief and your experiences. And, one dessert does not cause diabetes, but the years of desserts, years of overindulgence in sugar, flour, and alcohol causes all kinds of diabetes. And the new one is Alzheimer's, right? They call that diabetes 3. And we have 2 men in our lives, young. They're in their 60s. One's in their 70s, one's in their 60s. And it's so sad. Too young for that, right? And so we're the remnant, and we can fast and we can pray that off, and we can make better choices for ourselves and for others too, especially our families. So thank you so much for being here. God bless you. And we will do another one another time, but this is great. I really appreciate you all. If you are interested in learning more about spiritual fasting and permanent weight loss, then come join my course, Delay and Pray, a guided course for weight loss through spiritual fasting. You won't go through it alone either. I will be there to coach you every step of the way. This is a group coaching program where you are part of an amazing community of like-minded Catholics who have the same goal as you, to bring about miracles while losing that weight permanently through spiritual fasting. Your purchase includes an online course detailing what spiritual fasting is, how to do it, and all the tools you need to get you the results you're longing for. Head over to my website right now at thecatholicfastingcoach.com and get the details on how to join. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and LinkedIn to always get the latest daily information to help you keep fasting, my friends. Can't wait to see you in there. May God bless you and keep you always.